And actually, I did a serial argument in my theories. I'm almost positive. Yeah, I did a serial argument. I didn't say this in the video at all, but if, you know, for the nerds that want to just check to see one fleshed out, sort of live, I did this in my theories section. I think it's in my theory sections on race, where I talk about the denial. I constructed an argument to deny black people their freedom, and I think I arrived at like a few sub-conclusions. Conclusion, which led to another conclusion, which led to another conclusion. I'm almost positive. I might go back and watch it myself, but I'm 99% sure that the argument that I constructed in the theories series on race for the denial of black people's freedom, I used a serial argument. So basically, let me read it first. The conclusion of one argument becomes the premise cluster for another. It's pretty simple. Dot, 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 dot. If this is the case, this is the case, this is the case, then that's the case. Well, if that's the case, then that's the case, and on and on and on. This is why I said it's conducive to hypothetical syllogism. It's not the same, per se, and there's ways to transform this and make it very, very complex, but it's the general structure, right? So it's S1 plus S2 plus dot, 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 Sn leads me to my first, which is O, element O, and then that leads me to P, right? So that's the format of an argument, a serial argument. Obviously, we saw before, this is link supported, right? So it would be link supported premise cluster, to be technical, right? It would be link supported premise cluster leads me to conclusion. That conclusion now becomes a premise for another conclusion. So it's the, in a sense, if you wanted to say in hypothetical terms, hypothetical syllogism, that is, it would be the conclusion of this argument, but the antecedent of this argument. So to be technical, the linked support premise cluster leads me to a conclusion, which then becomes the antecedent for the subsequent argument, to be technical. Okay, so let's look at an example. Jazz is an improvisational music. So jazz is improvisational music. This tells us that jazz is better appreciated live than on record, which is true. Jazz music live is out of control, especially if there's a dude on the xylophone. For some reason, the xylophone stuff is just out of control. I see somebody, da, 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 da. It's amazing. Okay, so jazz is improvisational music. This tells us that jazz is better appreciated live than on record. But that in turn, that meaning that it's better appreciated in live than on record, but that in turn is our indication, means that a true jazz lover should go to jazz nightclubs, which I agree with. Okay? It's not my argument, very good argument. What does that look like? 1, 2, and 3, right? Jazz music, and I'm not going to write this down, right? Jazz music is improvisational music. 1. 2, jazz is better appreciated live than on record. 3, jazz lovers should go to jazz clubs. I mean, it's pretty sort of walking your way right down the argument, right? Very, very simple. I'm trying to think if I can think of one. The first thing that came in my head was homeowners. All homeowners, all homeowners pay property taxes. All their property taxes are used to build schools. Therefore, no, it would be too complicated. It would be too complicated. The idea that came to my head, I have a good one, but it's too complicated for an intro. You get the basic idea, so just stick with the format. You take on your own time the time to figure out an argument that fits this format, but S1 plus S2 plus Sn in a linked premise cluster leads to a conclusion. That conclusion becomes the antecedent for, so it's like when you get to the therefore this ... is a state of affairs. As the end of the original argument, you then take exactly that statement, therefore this ... is a statement of affairs, which ended the argument, and then you use that to begin a new argument. So if it's the case that that is the case, then ... that becomes the structure. I can think of it, but I don't feel like thinking about it. And the ones that I'm thinking of, it's going to be too complicated and it's not going to make it clearer than I have already made it. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. But the thing I like about this is precisely why I love using these concepts for rhetoric, because it's not as imposing, right? What we're doing is pretty hardcore stuff. It doesn't seem like it's hardcore. I know it doesn't, right? It seems like, oh, this is, this is not on par with, the really, people love the really dense logic stuff, right? They love that stuff, which is fine. I don't have a problem doing it. But the truth is, you're really never really going to be able to have to apply, subalternation concepts and contradictory claims with respect to, existential generalization. I mean, when are you really going to ever use that in life? It makes for a great pedagogical device. It will help make you a much, much smarter person as far as critical analysis. But you're usually not going to be able to apply that in the real world. This stuff, you apply all the time. Right? So I can be a little bit more lax in my presentation style because it's stuff that I'm comfortable speaking on. It's stuff that you guys have seen a billion times and you can identify. And what it just makes for is really cool. It's a new cool skill to have in your toolbox. I remember, just a quick side note, my Facebook page updates automatically every time I put up a YouTube video, or if I tweet, or if I go to my blog. I have it all synced up to where as soon as I do any transformation changes on my YouTube, my blog, my Twitter, it automatically shoots stuff to my Facebook. So my Facebook basically populates itself by itself. It's an autopilot. I don't even really, I'll occasionally put a comment or something, but even my jogs auto-populate. So my Facebook is just sort of like auto-population. But I decided a few weeks ago when they did the first GOP debate, I forget what channel it was on, to analyze the structure of each of the GOP candidates' arguments. So I put like Michelle Bachmann, and then I'd put Newt Gingrich and all the other contestants, whatever, blah blah blah. And then as they were talking in real time, just for the hell of it, I was going through analyzing their arguments. Oh, she said this, but that's a logical contradiction for that, da, da, da. And it's not to show, oh, look how smart Dr. Campbell is. It's like, you guys can do this. Once you've practiced this, you immediately know parallel argumentation when you hear it. You're like, I know what that is, right? Divergent argument, a little bit harder to do on the fly, but I know what that is. Serial argument, immediately, I know what that is, right? So the point is, it's just really, for me, this is probably the section that's going to have, it might be the most obvious, it might be the most obvious, but it will be the most practical, right? A section like this, because it's so obvious, will be the most practical. And on top of that, it's not as stringent as the hardcore mathematical stuff that I've done already in section 1 and section 2, where there's only one answer. There's many, many different ways to interpret how you map and analyze an argument. And you usually do it for your own good so that I can understand, right? So, I don't know. I like this type of stuff, personally. All right, lastly, number 4. Converging arguments involving the elaboration of 2 different lines of attack on the same ultimate conclusion. Now, this is not simple, right? This one requires a little bit of explanation, but you'll get it. It's not difficult. I mean, none of this really is difficult. Okay, so just look at the image and you'll be able to have an idea. I'm not going to, well, I guess I should draw the image because I drew every other one, but this one's a little bit bigger. Converging. Converging argument, and then we switch colors, and it's basically like these: S1 plus S2 dot plus dot 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 SM here leads to a point, and then we have S1 plus S2 plus dot 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 S, was it S plus N? No, SN. That leads to SP, SO. Converging argument. Okay. Oh, n plus 1. I'm not going to get that type. I'm not even going to describe that because there's no need to get that type. Well, n plus 1. N plus 1. Don't worry about the subscripts. It's not important at all. Okay. So, converging arguments. This is sort of the format that it takes, right? One linked to, let's be technical. Now I can be a little bit technical. And this is what's cool. We've been getting deeper and deeper gradually. But because it's so informal, I hope I'm not too informal and going too fast through this. I hope it's clear. I think it's clear. I feel like it's clear. We have a linked premise cluster. A linked premise cluster. That linked premise cluster leads to a conclusion.